You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another disappointed episode of the Assembly Call. As today, you're going to be Hoosiers fall 77-73 to Penn State in the Big Ten Tournament Semifinals. That result drops IU now to 22-11 on the season. And I'm your host, Andy Bottoms. I'm here with Ryan Phillips and Jeff Marlowe, and I believe Coach Tonsoni is going to attempt to join us again as well, and we'll break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. And this was a game where IU played poorly in a stretch to end the second half. About the middle of the second half, really gave up an early lead, similar to what they did in the Maryland game. And it seemed like at times in the second half they were going to be able to make another comeback, but unfortunately, once they came back and got the game tied, Penn State extended the lead once again. And despite a frenetic comeback from IU at the end, where they played with a whole different sense of urgency than they had played with in previous parts of the game, that was kind of the story. And Penn State ends up holding on to win by 4 points. So I think what we'll end up feeling like we're talking about here is a somewhat similar refrain, quite honestly, to what we've had in a number of other losses over the course of the season, in terms of it not really being the fact that they lost, it was how they lost and how they played in key stretches of the game. So we'll talk more about that as we break down the game on the show today. But we'll start the show as we do with every show, and that's with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. The banner moment, I guess, seemed like in the middle of the second half when IU tied it at 47, ran a nice baseline out of bounds play, got the ball into TJD, who dunked it and tied the game at 47. That really culminated in an IU comeback that featured some strong play from the bench once again. I think they got 9 straight out of Tamar Bates and Malik Renew, both of whom gave a good lift over the course of the game. And it was TJD who was able to get the last basket to finally tie the game up. And as I said before, the problem was it felt like that was shaping up to be the banner moment. And then Penn State ripped off 7 in a row. And IU never really totally recovered, although, as I mentioned, they did make a good comeback at the end, but it was too little too late. And I think many of us know that we did a post-game show after this. We're hoping for kind of the other side of a late-game meltdown against Penn State that IU had some years ago, where they just couldn't get the ball in bounds and struggled there. And but anyway, the banner moment again was that play from TJD that tied it up. Also, probably close to that was a really impressive dunk from Race Thompson in the first half when things were going a little bit better for IU, and that was one of the last good plays of the first half before it got away from them a little bit as they went that way. But our banner moment today, as always, brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, who is now in their 6th season of sponsoring the Assembly Call. They're second as the presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. And as you surely know by now, Home Field has the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you'll find anywhere, with beloved logos like 2 different versions of Bison and the new women's basketball Big Ten Champs shirt that I wore last night. Thought it was lucky. Wore it again under my sweatshirt today. Not so much. But if you support other college programs or have people in your life who do, Home Field probably has something for them as well. Their product line now extends to more than 120 schools with unique vintage logos for all of them. As Jared mentioned last night, they are coming back out with the IU Bomber jacket. So limited time to sign up for and get one of those ordered. So if that's something that interests you as an IU fan, make sure you go out and do that soon before they are gone once again. But no matter what you buy, you know that it'll be comfortable and the colors will last through many washings. Plus, you're supporting an Indiana-based company that came up through the Kelley School of Business. And what could be better than that? So go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME for 15% off. Once again, the website, homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, now it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts on the rest of our team. And Ryan, we'll start with you. Probably lots to rant about from this game. Maybe hard to narrow it down, quite honestly, if you're so inclined. So, but I'll throw it to you first for your thoughts.
Yeah, that last scramble, I think, was a combination of Penn State being fatigued and IU finally waking back up. But they were down 15 with, 2.5 minutes left, something like that. I mean, and that felt like what the game was, honestly. Indiana got it to 40, tied it at 47, as you mentioned, and then just they got back by going straight to Trace Jackson Davis and letting him go to work. And they got some baskets off of that, but it was mostly just let your All-American go to work because Penn State doesn't have anybody that's quick enough to guard him, especially not fatigued. And he was able to work his way around, get some baskets, draw some fouls. And then they tied it up and went directly away from that and didn't go back to that for a while. And I just am puzzled as to why and why there wasn't more of an emphasis, not only from the leaders on the floor, but also from the bench to be like, no, stop what you're doing and go back to our All-American, please. Because they took some bad shots, had a turnover, and Penn State just lengthened the lead right there. And that was really the only time. They got it within 5 at one point, but it never felt like it was that close. And quite frankly, today, the day is based on, Hood Schifino, 4 of 13 from the field. Penn State baited him. He's a great pull-up jump shooter, but Penn State baited him into contested twos and baited him into off-balance twos where he had his body shifting as he's shooting it. And, he finished with 11 points. He had a couple of those late, but 4 of 13 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3. And then Trey Galloway, for the second game in the row, just didn't show up on either end of the floor. Tamar Bates was far better than him on both ends of the floor today again, which is a bad sign for Indiana because you need a guy like Trey Galloway to be playing well on both ends of the floor to win. Because if you face a team like Penn State in the NCAA tournament, they're going to do exactly what they did to Indiana today. And Indiana has not really, they've had minor adjustments, but they haven't changed their philosophy against teams like this all season. It's basically go out on an island and guard, and if they switch, we're switching everything, regardless of if it's a bad matchup. They don't double guys who drive in when it's a bigger guard or forward who drives in. They don't run a double or do anything or even show a double, and that's why Pickett was able to crush him. They would switch on to Tamar Bates. Tamar Bates is not strong enough to guard Jalen Pickett, and he would just back. It's not Tamar's fault. He's a big dude who's going to back you right down, and there was no help from anyone coming. Just some of the little adjustments that could have been made were not made. Late, again, they woke up, pressed. They could have pressed at 5 minutes. Maybe they changed things. Maybe they speed the game up, which was more to their liking. It didn't happen. And what happened at the end was they got within 3. It's great. He had a shot to win it. I don't think Jalen's the guy they want taking that three-pointer there. I think you want to go straight to the hoop or go to the hoop and kick out to a guy like Tamar to hit some threes. Instead, Jalen goes and bounces off a pull-up as he had all day, a contested pull-up, and missed it. And I don't think anyone was surprised that he missed it. But it was too little too late. It was a great push. I appreciate the effort. I appreciate the heart to get back into it. Again, too little too late. And you're playing a team that played 3 games in 3 days, and you're the one who looked tired at the end. So, I mean, I'm not sure what the takeaway is other than teams like Penn State, teams like Iowa are a bad matchup for Indiana, and they better hope they don't get paired with a team like that in the NCAA tournament.
All right, Coach Marlowe, throw it to you next for your opening thoughts on the game.
Well, I'm going to piggyback off of Ryan a little bit. And again, I said it last night. I've been the biggest champion of Trey Galloway on this show as there is, and it just wasn't good. I mean, 2 games and 2 points, and that just in this environment, we need Trey Galloway to be giving us what he gave us most of the Big Ten season, which was close to double-figure points and consistent shooting and leadership and hustle and all those other intangibles that just weren't showing up today. I was really alarmed, Andy, and the rest of you by the lack of urgency that I just felt like we started off well.
20 minents.
But for a good 20 minutes of game action.
I might even suggest it was longer than 20, but okay.
Yeah, it might have been closer to 25. In 25, 30 minutes of no urgency. But when we play with urgency, same thing I said last night, we're capable of playing with and beating good teams and anybody, but we got to find a way to do that more consistently. And Ryan, I'll agree with you about the switches. I want to kind of get Coach's thoughts on this when we swing it to him. I'm not a big fan of what we're looking like the automatic switch. And they're trying to point guys out on the cuts and the slip screens and things, almost more like a matchup zone. But and Coach was there, maybe sees it a little better live than we're getting it on the TV. But I'm not the biggest fan of that. Unless you've practiced that a lot, that's a hard defense. And we miscommunicated.
It seems like that is their defense. Switch all 5. It's very NBA. Switch all 5.
But I don't remember seeing that so much earlier in the year. Maybe I missed it, but I just don't remember seeing all the pointing, all this, like trying where they're miscommunicating. We left 3 times that I can think of today and a couple times last night where we just left people wide open, either for a 3 or a dunk. And so, but maybe I'm just not remembering the way they're switching, but we seem like we made more contact on our switches earlier, which was what I always preached. We always wanted to make contact with our defender that we were switching with. That way we always knew who we were switching with. But I'm not going to give up on the season. I see some of that in the chat a little bit, but it is frustrating to see us play at times as well as we do. And then we just have these moments where we're going through the motions.
All right, Coach Sansoni, live and on the scene. Could even have been seen on your television screen behind the broadcast team, who was fairly clear had watched not much IU basketball over the course of the season, based on a couple of their comments during the game. But Coach, you have watched a ton of IU basketball this season. What were your impressions from being there live?
Well, it was just a little juiceless. That was in our text message. I thought Indiana lost focus and concentration on the game plan, and I'm not sure the game plan was right early for Penn State as well. But some of that switching struggled in the switching. I think they missed Funk on a. But 2 guys ran away from Funk, and that's what really spurred Penn State in the first half. It was 12-6, and Funk gets loose for a 3 when 2 guys switched on him, and then 2 guys ran away from him, and he hits a 3. In the second half, Funk did the same thing. They lost him in transition. It was 47-47, or it was 49-47, and he hits a big 3. And then they miscommunicate on a ball screen for a dunk, and it's 7, and that's the ball game. So it was a whole night of lost focus and lost concentration by the team, and we've seen some of that. The Iowa game reminds me a little bit of that. We competed better and fought, and this team does handle adversity at times, but it puts itself in adverse situations way too much. But offensively, Penn State did a great job guarding. And Indiana, when you face good defenses, struggle unless the 2 best players have incredible nights beyond belief. There is not a second necessarily philosophy to go against some of the things that are being thrown at IU. It is simply we're going to do our stuff, and if our stuff isn't working, it wasn't working tonight. Trace didn't have a lot of room to operate. Jalen was missing some shots, and then the others refused to shoot open shots. You're not going to take contested threes or volumes of threes. That's just not Indiana basketball. So the way this team is run can win a lot of games, and it can lose a lot of games. It's not going to be consistent based on who you're playing and what they're doing, and you run into a hot team. Indiana wasn't good enough tonight.
Yeah, so as we think about storylines, it kind of one offense and one defense I wanted to talk about. So offensively, we've beaten this drum pretty hard over the course of the season in terms of the volume of threes that IU shoots and the way that they approach things offensively. IU ends up 2 of 14 on threes over the course of the game. I think there was a point deep in the second half they were 1 of 10 at that point. And it's a little bit less to me the fact that they've missed shots. It was the unwillingness to take them and the way that this offense is built. It puts you in a really difficult position from a mathematical perspective, as we talked about. It's not like Penn State lit the world on fire from 3. They shot 35% from 3. They were 8 of 23. But you are playing so far behind from a numbers perspective by getting outshot that way from 3-point range. You have to do so much. And even when you look at the points in the paint, outscored more than doubled up Penn State on points in the paint. Now, Penn State got the free throw line a lot. That's not something that they typically do. They didn't miss a whole bunch. A lot of those, though, were, we can complain about some of the officiating, but that wasn't the reason. We bid on shot fakes, fouled people it was kind of decision-making on both ends in terms of falling for some of that stuff. It is very difficult for IU when they don't get a superhuman performance from both of the superstars on the team, and they don't get to the free throw line a bunch to really overcome the mix of shots that they're taking. And today was against a team who all they want to do is shoot threes, and will do that. And I thought there were multiple times IU ran themselves out of an open 3 into a tough 2, and they even made some of them. Miller Kopp made 2 really tough shots. but passed up wide open threes to take a much tougher 2-point shot, and was just emblematic of what IU did over the course of the game in terms of taking tough, long twos, which we know is part of what this team is going to do, but really played right into the hands of that, but didn't force Penn State to try to do the same thing. We'll talk about what IU did defensively, but Ryan, I mean, at this point, there's really not a whole lot we're going to do about it. This team is going to play how they're going to play. And I think this is going to be a factor no matter who IU plays and what happens. It was a little bit more to the extreme today, but I struggle with it. I know you wanted to talk about it, but you're formulaically putting yourself behind the 8 ball, it feels like.
Yeah, you're at a statistical disadvantage to essentially to start the game when nobody's hit a shot because you know the other team is going to make more threes than you do generally. And so you're automatically at a statistical. There's one point where, both teams had hit 8 field goals and Penn State was up 10 points, or 8 points, I think it was. I mean, it's just because you're not matching what they can do. You're trading 2 for 3 a lot. What I'll say about it, and I've noticed it over the last few games, and I want to get Coach Tonsoni's perspective on it. A lot of times when IU's getting those threes they pass up, it comes out of a kick out from the post and then a swing all the way around the offense with the ball rotation. And then the last guy decides not to take the 3. And the reason he decides not to take the 3 is because there's a closeout coming. Those ball rotations are incredibly slow. The ball moves at a glacial pace from guy to guy to guy, and you're giving the defense a chance to recover. Now, a couple times it hasn't happened, but I think guys are just used to it. If I'm the last guy in this train getting the ball, I'm going to have an athletic, tall guy closing out to my 3. It's not a comfortable way to take a 3. Now, should you shoot some of those? Absolutely. You need to pull the trigger sometimes, but not all of them. I mean, if you've got and Miller tried to shoot one late in the first half when he was contesting, the guy blocked it because Miller doesn't have a huge vertical. You got an athletic guy guarding you. He's going to block that shot. It's not comfortable. So I think those ball rotations, because Indiana doesn't do it enough, because a lot of times when Trace does kick it out, the offense works to either get Jalen going to the hoop or a pull-up, or it goes right back into Trace. When they do those ball rotations, it's not something they're comfortable with because they don't do it a whole lot. And so that ball moves so much that you watch other teams, watch Purdue rotate the ball around the perimeter. It moves from guy to guy to guy so fast, and there is a wide open shot at the end of it. That doesn't happen for Indiana. And I don't know if it's not going to change. We're too late in the season for that to change. That's something that needs to be worked on in the offseason is those passes need to move faster to get that shot open. Instead, sometimes there's hesitation. You see Jalen get a kick out from Trace sometimes, and the guy next to him is wide open for a perimeter jumper, and he hesitates, and then passes because he's looking to drive, looking for his own shot. It's just throwing everything off, and it's throwing off the timing and the rhythm of that offense. And if it worked faster, could that offense work better? Absolutely it could, because you'd be getting wide open looks. But you do get a guy like Miller or a guy like Trey whose shots take a little longer to get up, and they just don't have the time to get the ball off. And that's why you wind up hitting 2 of 14 today. Penn State closed out hard. I don't think Penn State's a great defensive team, but they did enough today to make those 3-point shooters uncomfortable. And if your shooters are uncomfortable, not going to make shots. And the only place you're going to get them other than that is in transition. And Miller had a 3 in transition today, but he just rushed it because I think in his mind, he's hearing from everybody, I need to shoot more, I need to shoot more, I need to shoot more. And he gets the ball and didn't even set himself to shoot and just fired it up. And of course he missed it. So it's in their heads right now, and they're not getting the looks they need. And there's nothing being run specifically to get them the ball unless it's a kick out throughout the offense. So there's no solution to it at this point in the season. The offense is the offense. I think we've talked about it. We all agree it's kind of an old school offense. It is not a modern basketball offense. And Indiana's basically having to overcome this every single game they play because other teams hunt threes and they don't.
Yeah, it's we're trying to fit guys into a system, and the guys don't necessarily fit it. In the NBA, if you pass it around like that, guys can elevate and shoot the 3 and hit contested threes left and right, or the ball. But some of it's moving the ball, but some of it's also the stationary shooters. Teams know where you're going to be, so you can set your defensive rotations. And even if you move slightly, lift a player from the baseline to the wing, a coach is going to scout that and say, hey, you close out to this area hard. When that ball gets kicked out from TJD to the top, you are running out to the wing because someone will be there. Because, and a lot of teams run the same stuff. But when you do it consistently, and you do it over and over again with other options not being there, and I also think that they were tentative. Like, you've got to rise up and shoot some. You can't mentally, Brian. You're probably into something there, but I thought Tamar passed up shots more than Miller, but even Miller passed up shots, and you start to wonder if that's not an emphasis of, hey, shot fake to closeout and redrive the drive. Another part, Ryan, is when you're minus. Here's a situation where X hurts. We don't have a secondary driver, so
absolutely. And
Jalen's
Jalen's drives usually
hard.
stop around the free throw line too, so you're not sucking the defense in too far.
So I'm coaching against IU. You close out hard and run them off the 3-point line, and if you have a driver, you're going to go, okay, I need to close out short because you're afraid of him driving and then kicking an alley-oop to TJD or something like that. But you're not afraid of Miller Kopp putting it on the floor, and you're not afraid of Tamar Bates or Galloway can do it, but he struggled the last couple games. So it's a little bit of the personnel is not here yet for Coach Woodson's system to run fluidly the way he wants to run it. And on days like this where the other team plays well and has a good strategy, you run the risk of coming up short, and Indiana did.
Coach
Yeah,
Marlowe?
I'm going to be the contrarian here. If you're a shooter, shoot the damn ball. I'm sorry. I was not a Division I basketball player, but when I was in high school, my job was to shoot the ball. I didn't care who was closing out on me. I didn't care how many times it got blocked. Miller Kopp, shoot the ball when you're open. I don't care if you have to shoot it over somebody. Their hand's a guide. Heck with that. I know I'm getting riled up here, but you're on scholarship to shoot the ball. Shoot it. And if you miss it, then they'll take you out. And I will agree with one thing, Brian. I think maybe they are emphasizing the pump fake on it, but I don't get that as well. But I will also go back to this as well on Jalen. Penn State plays Jalen the way I would probably play him. They don't drop. And Jalen thrives against drop coverage against the bigs that drop, and they didn't drop. And I think that Jalen's got to find now what his secondary thing is to go against a team that doesn't drop and still be as effective as he is against the teams that do drop. But I thought Miller passed up too many shots today. He took one off a dribble today where he did almost like a 360. Somehow got it to go.
Made it.
He made it.
More of that, Miller.
He made it. But you know what else will help freeze the closeout if you're that worried about the closeout? Pass fake, and you'll actually freeze the closeout a little bit too. I'm fired up because I was a shooter and my job was to shoot the ball, and I wasn't too worried about who was closing out on me.
Coach, I agree with your basic premise that if you're a shooter, you need to pull the trigger. I agree with that basic premise. The problem is Mike Woodson has said this publicly. The offense's job is not to get you guys shots. They are drilled into them that they are not the first option. They are not the second option. They're not the third option. That is like their fifth option is to take that three.
That's
so
true.
That has been in their head. And so in the back of their mind, when they get this, it's like, well, I got an All-American right there and I got a lottery pick right there. If this is going to be slightly contested, we can get a better look, especially when you're a veteran like Miller. Tamar Bates has no conscience as far as that goes. He'll take it if he thinks he's open. Sometimes he doesn't think he's open when he is, and we've seen him pass up shots too. But Miller is a senior leader trying to make the winning play. He's going to pass up shots if he thinks that TJD can get a better one or if Jalen can get a better one. That's the mentality. And you ask Mike Woodson, he's like, our job is not to get Miller Kopp shots. He has said that straight up. Our job is not to get Miller Kopp shots, not the purpose of the offense. And so he's hearing that constantly. So him just firing contested threes is not going to happen. I mean, you can say he should change his mentality, but he should be given that mentality should be drilled into him by the coaches. Trace seems to be the only one who's telling Miller, shoot the ball if you have it. Shoot the ball if you have it. And on top of that, what I will say is that Coach Tonsoni is on to something here. The stationary shooter situation where Mike Woodson has said over and over and over, I like stationary shooters because everybody knows where they are. Well, the defense knows where they are too. And so that makes it, if you're on the help side, you know exactly where you need to close out to. You don't have to look for your guy and then go, which causes a momentary hesitation, which slows the closeout. Instead, you just run to a spot on the floor because you know he's going to be right there. Occasionally, they'll shift over a few feet, but you're never that far off. And there's never cuts being run to vacate other sides. And so that's an issue, and it needs to be addressed because you don't see other teams do that. Everybody else moves their shooters to advantageous positions. Indiana does not.
All right, let's talk defense for a second. I think, and Coach, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Pickett is a really tough cover for anybody. The way the booty ball and all that stuff that has been in there. One thing I thought, and this ties back to something that Ryan talked about earlier. It was they looked for the matchup that they wanted with him, and then they basically just let him dribble for 15 seconds to get into whatever position that he wanted. I think so. So two things. One of them is that, and kind of your thoughts on the way they approach switching in those scenarios. And then the other, it seemed like they did a better job of this as the game went on. Didn't help off shooters as much. But again, we've talked about this before. They're helping on drives that aren't there or drives the other team doesn't want to make. If Funk wants to put the ball on the floor, good. There was a play where New had kind of an out of control closeout, but he ran Seth Lundy off the line. Lundy shoots almost exclusively 3-pointers. Now he made the shot, but it was almost like, hey, that's fine. You're now making them take a shot that they want IU to take. And so I thought that got better as the game went on, but there were still times in key moments when they lobbed into a big guy on the opposite side of the lane. I forget who it was. It helped all the way down into the lane. TJD's there. If the guy's going to score over TJD, you're not doing anything about it. So he's got to close out from the block to the wing to try to, stop a 3-point shooter. Penn State obviously makes it, and they do that. So I guess, Coach, what are your thoughts on IU's choices defensively in terms of what they did there over the course of the game?
It's interesting. We talked last night about Pickett is going to be the key, and he was. He was fantastic tonight in finding players, scoring points, rebounds, 7 rebounds, rebounding his own misses. If you're going to play him one-on-one, you got to get the ideal matchup and stay with it, I think. I think the switching allowed them to dictate who he was going to go against. So I don't mind the not doubling because this team shoots threes, and if you double, you're in deep trouble, right? So
especially because IU struggles on refinding and closing out.
And Indiana's not a double team. So, the problem was Penn State did a good job of, really getting the matchups and taking advantage of it. But I don't have a problem with not doubling him. Maybe have a little bit of a question on why they switched so much and got into some bad situations.
Yeah, Coach Marlowe, your thoughts? Anything defensively stick out to you? What IU did tonight?
Yeah, the one thing that I also think, I think Brian raises a good point about the defense is, but I think sometimes we don't mainly because I think our guys feel like they have to get right up to the line to shoot the three. I don't think we understand that there are other kids that shoot the ball from beyond the line. And so we get comfortable. We'll allow them to be just step and a half, 2 steps back and think, oh, they're not shooting it. No, Funk and Pickett and Lundy, you have to be up in their shirt. That's what I used to tell kids. If we had somebody we identify as a good shooter, we wanted you up in their shirt. We wanted to make you put it on the deck and be a driver. I know, again, I'm not trying to say I'm Mike Woodson or I know more than Mike Woodson, but I still believe there's value to philosophies of you make shooters drive and drivers shoot. And too many times, especially against Penn State in the 2 games this year, we've allowed shooters to shoot and be comfortable shooting. And I don't understand whether the game plan isn't correct to begin with. I won't go that far, but the kids aren't executing the game plan on the floor. That much is obvious.
Concentration defensively. When you run away from Funk and you leave him, when you don't find him in transition, when you don't close out all night long. I thought Race Thompson had a bad Big Ten tournament in closing out. His hands were down. He was a step too short out closing out and gave up some big threes against Maryland and against Penn State. That's just a lack of focus and concentration. Some of it is the game plan, the switching. Some of it is the players today just, and these tournaments, you flip a coin. Like Penn State's on a run. Indiana played the last game, had to come around a little bit of preparation, not making any excuses, but you won't see that again. You'll see a Thursday, Friday, or a Thursday, Saturday, Friday, Sunday, where you have a chance to really get into something. But they look confused and just out of sorts mentally in their focus. And the little things, then Penn State took advantage of it. Every time there was a mistake, Penn State seemed to get a rebound basket or a kick out for a three. And Indiana didn't have that sense of urgency until the very end.
I'll say that I do want to mention this because you mentioned Race Thompson struggling on defense. If he's struggling on defense, there's no reason not to have Malik Renew in the game. And I thought Woodson left Race in the game way too long. He helped on a steal at the end. on the press. But before that, there was about 8 minutes of Race Thompson that was just bad. And I love Race Thompson, and I thought it was just a bad performance. And Malik Renew was playing well, and I think that the team got energy burst when Malik was in there, probably because Malik's played fewer minutes and is fresher. And I thought they got a lift when Tamar Bates was in the game too, but he played late. Malik didn't. I think at some point Mike Woodson has to shove Malik Renew back in that game, even just for the offensive rebounding ability or something, to help you out on the offensive end. Race Thompson just didn't have much going on at defense, and if he's not helping you defensively, there's no reason for Malik to not be in the game because he's a better offensive player.
Yeah, I mean, Renew had 6.6 rebounds in 12 minutes. It's stunning to me that he only played 12 minutes. Now, he did have, and
he played fine on the perimeter. He played fine when they moved him out on the perimeter too. And when he got switched on to Pickett couldn't back him down. I mean, it's our best option against Pickett today was the times that Trace got switched on to him. I mean, because he couldn't power Trace down to the block, and even when he did, he had so much length that he'd have to shoot over him. And Malik was the same way. He couldn't push Malik around. They started doing a better job picking the switch man. So
and like Andy said, at least Renault got out and made shooters get off the line. He wasn't perfect closeouts, so it wasn't what you would teach, but he at least got out there and made the shooters uncomfortable.
Yeah, I thought, I could see giving him a little bit of a break, but they took him out, and then Race Thompson came in and almost immediately tried to back somebody down, lost the ball. Once he came back in, instead of just getting
started
back
the game well. I thought he started the game well.
And they really tried to take advantage of him being on Pickett. He scored a little bit in the post, but he only ended up 4 of 10. He missed a couple right around the rim that you really need him to convert. And so anyway, wanted to have a quick bracketology conversation. I know Coach Tonsoni's got to hit the road to drive home. Coach, I guess for everybody's benefit, where did you guys have IU coming into this game? And do you think that changes at all based on the result?
We had him, Andy, as a 4 seed. I think that stays. I think there's a slight chance of a 5 if the committee thinks Iowa State has righted themselves. Iowa State was ahead of IU at the reveal, lost a lot of games, and then beat Baylor twice. Those are really good wins. And if Xavier wins their championship and Virginia happens to win, I think those are the teams that then the committee can say one of those teams has to be a 5, and Indiana losing to Penn State, and I think going 3-3 since the reveal. I think that's a small chance. We're probably going to keep them on the 4 line and keep Iowa State at the top 5. We're going to, after the drive home, put a lot of work into the final thing this evening. The bigger question is, what do you do with Penn State? How do they rise up if you had them as an 11 or out coming into the tournament? And then everyone says that the results don't matter, and they're playing for a championship. How high does a 55 net Penn State rise this late? And I think the committee's a little ticked off that everyone knows they haven't been making the changes on the conference tournament that they're likely to make some this year. So, but I think
I have definitely had that thought as I've been doing stuff this week. I've definitely had that thought.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I agree. I agree with having him as a 4. That's where I had him coming into today. I think it's easy, particularly as fans, to kind of overreact and say this was a bad loss. It's not a bad loss in the sense that it's to a tournament level team on a neutral floor. It's not a bad loss in that regard. I think the frustration over how IU plays probably makes people think they're going to drop more than is really realistic for them to drop. I'm with you. I think by far the most likely outcome is if they end up a 4 with an outside chance of a 5 at this point. So I'll let you close with whatever else you're going to say. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's fun atmosphere, great turnout, great IU fans here at support in Chicago, and appreciate those who stopped to say hello. And tomorrow we're going to relax. So we know that they're going to be in the NCAA tournament. They're going to be a top 20 team in the tournament field, a 4 or 5. If you're the worst 5, you're the 20th best team in the country, according to the selection committee. So disappointing day. Not happy with the way they played for most of the game. And we've seen this big win at Purdue, loss to Penn State, find it again. Good, this team has been inconsistent, and some of that's due to the injuries, some of that's due to the roster makeup, and we just got to hope that they can find a couple wins and make a Sweet 16. It's a fun team. I thought they played hard. I just didn't think they were as focused on the little things that matter, and Penn State did a much better job. So get some rest. Might be a blessing in disguise, fellas, instead of with all the minutes that we play, that you get home.
I definitely said I'd rather lose today than tomorrow. So if you're going to lose,
yeah. All right. Well, Coach, appreciate you hopping on for us, and safe travels home to you, and good luck to you in Delphi and in the bracket matrix. All right.
All righty. See you, fellas.
All right. See you, Coach.
no, Coach.
All right. Well, when we come back, we will talk more about IU's 77-70 loss. We'll point out some meaningful moments you might have missed, and then go inside the numbers. You're listening to Assembly Call. Stick with us.
What's going on? It's Christian Wofford. What's the only thing better than an epic buzzer beater? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join my guys Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU game. Go Hoosiers.
All right. Thank you, Christian. And you're listening to the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and Jeff Marlowe, and we're breaking down IU's 77-73 loss to Penn State. And right now it's time for the meaningful moment that you might have missed, which is brought to you by our friends over at the Hoosier Ticket Project, where they help individuals and families experience Indiana University athletic events in person for the first time through the generosity of alumni and fans. To learn more about how you can donate money or extra tickets to help create meaningful moments for other IU fans, you can visit HoosierTicketProject.org. Again, that's HoosierTicketProject.org.
Meaningful moments that you might have missed.
Coach Marlowe, we made a commitment to you that we would let you go first in this segment so that no one would steal your moments again. I know that you said that you had one, so I will kick it to you first for a meaningful moment that you jotted down from the game today.
Yeah, I'm going to go back, and we've kind of talked around this meaningful moment already with you and Ryan and Coach, but it's that turnover by Jalen Hood-Schifino in the second half when we were up 49-47. We had the ball, another chance to either get tied or get the lead back or get a lead, and Jalen was just really loose with the ball, just a real casual type pass that gets a steal, and that's when Funk hits the three in transition, and from there it really I know we got it back at the end, but to me that was where that moment, I circled that as soon as it happened. I was like, dang it, that's a play that's going to come back to haunt us because it's just too casual. Jalen may have been tired. He may have been fatigued. And we've had that discussion before, and we may have it again today about whether or not he needs some rest. But that pass in that situation, way too casual, way too loose. He didn't value the ball enough, and they took advantage of it. And to me, that was the meaningful moment I really wanted to hit today.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job of really jumping him on some of these pick and rolls, double teaming him, putting him in positions to try to get the ball out of his hands. And I thought there were times that, as you said, he struggled to make crisp passes or the right pass. There was another one, and kind of speaks a little bit to this in one of the moments that I had, that I used up 12-6 in the first half, had two chances with the ball to extend the lead. Galloway settled for a three. That was after I think he just made the great pass in transition to TJD. Kind of settled for a three early in the shot clock. And then next possession, IU gets a stop, comes back down. Hood-Schifino airmails one into about the fifth row. It was so high over Kopp's head, the Kopp didn't even bother to try to jump for it. And I just thought some of those things were, just wasn't as sharp. And for as well as he played last night, granted, he played 40 minutes in that game, and we can have those conversations. But, yeah, I think that play that you talked about was really one where, you can stem the tide of the run really quickly right there. And instead it became a 5-0 run and then a 7-0 run. And all the work that you had done, it's so deflating. All the work that you had done to get back in the game and tie it up just goes away just like that. Ryan, thoughts on anything different that you saw from Huchefino? Do you attribute it to Penn State's defense, him being tired? Definitely a game that he struggled. He came out first basket of the second half, really absorbed some contact and scored. And I thought, all right, he's going to come out and really take it to him. And then it was a while before he scored again and really impacted the game.
I thought that I thought that play was hopefully going to be, hey, that's a sort of wake up moment and it'll get going. But I thought two things, as Coach Marlowe has noted, they didn't play drop coverage on him, so his long 2 attempts were mostly contested, or he was having to get him up quick before the defender recovered to him, and he was rushing, and you could see his whole body was, not usually he's very square when he takes those pull-ups, and he was not square on his long pull-ups today. But also, I mean, let's be real. He played 40 minutes last night and played 40 minutes again today. That wears you down. I'm sorry. I know everyone's gonna say, well, he's 18 years old. He can play as long as he wants. That's a load of horse shit. Like, guys get tired. They just do. I don't care how young you are. When you're not used to doing something constantly, you're going to get tired, especially back-to-back days. Do the hardest workout you've ever done in your life and try and go to the gym and do the exact same thing the next day. You're going to have a little bit of a taper off. And that's why kudos to Penn State playing their 3rd game in 3 days and having it go down to the wire after overtime yesterday. They rose up to the occasion, and I'm not sure exactly what point Indiana tied at 47-47, but when they tied it, Penn State looks slow. I tweeted out, their legs are heavy right now. They're slowing down. Indiana keeps attacking with Trace Jackson-Davis. They are tired. They can't guard him. And Indiana let them back in the game. Penn State got a second wind. It's probably actually in this tournament like their 5th wind, and attacked Indiana and turned the tables, was able to turn the tables after some bad offensive possessions by Indiana, allowed the momentum. They allowed momentum to carry them. And I thought at that point, 47-47, with how Penn State looked and with the crowd behind Indiana, if you play smart down the stretch, you're going to win this game. And Indiana just didn't play smart. And that goes into Jalen. It goes into a couple other guys who just did not execute the way they needed to. And I don't think Indiana attacked the way it needed to. And part of that's Jalen. I mean, I do think that Jalen at some point, I know he's a lottery pick. He's got that Kobe mentality. He's just going to keep going until you force him to stop. I think at some point he needed to start looking for other people's shots instead of his own a bit more, because some nights you just don't have it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Great players have off nights. And I think that he just kept trying to find his game a bit too much. And that last 3 at the buzzer, I mean, I know he's made some big shots late, so you're not super angry at him for taking that shot, but at the same time, it was off the bounce, fading away almost, or not fading away, but fading to the side, when Indiana needed a better shot than that. I think at that point, down 3, you need a better shot than that. If it's down 4, you just rush into 3 to do it. But so I think his game was just, he allowed Penn State to force him into something he didn't want to be, and then just continued to do that as opposed to making an adjustment.
Yeah, the other thing that really happened in that stretch shortly thereafter, Trace went, I'm trying to look at this now, so I could be missing a shot here or there. He made the dunk to tie it with 10:23 to play, and the next field goal attempt or free throw attempt that he had came with 2 minutes and 43 seconds left in that game. I mean, that was almost 8 minutes where he didn't get a shot. And I don't know that was really something Penn State was doing. I just thought IU went away from him and took more difficult shots than they really needed to. They didn't have anybody that could guard him or really wanted to guard him at that point. Anybody got in foul trouble. I mean, the one guy came in and just, totally, kicked his self-respect out the window and tried to throw himself on the ground to get a foul call.
That should have been a flop warning. They wouldn't call it because there was contact, but still they should have reviewed that. I mean, he went down like a sniper guy.
But anyway, I mean, I guess I did think that was terrible, but I just thought they went away from him really for no reason. Penn State didn't change what they were doing. And in a game like this, when they did have heavy legs, it felt like in that time, just too many possessions where he didn't touch the ball, where you relied too much on other guys to make plays.
Andy, I will say, I think there were a couple of those. He did get some touches. I want to say it was after that in that segment where you're talking about, I agree, not enough, but there were a couple of plays there where I thought he was going up and they ruled the foul on. He got fouled twice in that 8 minutes that Andy's talking about. There was at least 2 plays where I thought he was going up pretty obviously, and the TV crew did too, and they ruled it on the floor. So officially, he didn't get a shot, but he should have been at the line.
That's fair. That's fair. One other moment or sequence, and really this is just a means to talk about Malik Renew and Tamar. There was a stretch in the second half where those 2 guys scored 9 straight points for IU. I think Brace Thompson had actually scored the 2 before that. So not going to be too many times when IU scores 11 out of 11 IU points that none of them are scored by TJD or Jalen Hood-Schifino. But I thought once again, Renew played really well. I know we touched on him. It's probably a better chance to touch on Tamar Bates. Now, I thought he came out aggressive, took a lot of shots. I know one of you mentioned earlier, I think, Ryan, it was you, that he even passed up a couple. He ended up taking 12 shots. A couple,
his first
maybe
2 were bad decisions.
Yeah, a couple were forced, but I thought in general he didn't let that take him out of the game, and was more aggressive there. He had a really nice drive that he just couldn't finish. IU missed for as many points in the paint as they had. They missed a few bunnies right around the rim, but I thought he really gave a spark, especially on another day when Trey Galloway was struggling. The biggest thing that Bates struggled with was defensively with trying to guard Jalen Pickett, which is a position that he probably doesn't need to be put in, as we talked about before, but ends up 6 of 12 from the floor, 2 of 5 from 3, hit the only 2 threes for IU in the game today, 3 assists, no turnovers, did have 4 fouls. Most of those were late in the game, just trying to get steals and things like that. But another solid effort from Tamar. So if we want to try to at least start to veer this into optimism territory here, I think his play and Renew's play over the last 2 games have been important and something IU is going to need. Ryan, hop in with thoughts on Tamar's play today.
Yeah, I mean, he's IU's second leading scorer today was Tamar Bates. I don't think anybody would have bet that earlier in the day. He did. He early on he had a drive and like a floater that was bad, and then he had another one where he kind of pulled up quick, and just not shots you want him taking, especially just after you get into the game. You want to be into the game a little bit, unless it's a wide open 3, which he can make. Take those, but just pulling the trigger way too quick, and one of them was a possession where nobody else got a touch, and he had a floater. He shot a floater in a precarious situation where he was down. It's just like, no, Tamar, calm down. But I thought, other than when he was guarding Pickett, which is just out of his control, Pickett's a big guy who just mauls people into the position he wants to. And quite frankly, that's a guy you can flop on because he backs into you so hard, he could probably draw some fouls. But he didn't do that. He didn't want to play solid defense on him, and I credit them for that. The problem is if Pickett gets where he wants to go, 9 out of 10 times he's making that little turnaround jumper, and Bates just not big enough and strong enough to handle that, so he got switched onto a few times. Other than that, I thought Bates played really well defensively. I thought he was with his man. He would not leave his guy on the perimeter. I think he got caught up once on a switch and recover where they hit a 3 over him, but other than that, I thought he played really well. Again, we've seen this a couple games in a row where when he's been in there, at the very least, his defense has been good, and he made some big shots for Indiana. Hit a big 3 to close the gap, hit another 3 late to close the gap, and he actually started driving a little bit, getting into better positions when the 3s weren't there and making some shots. And Tamar Bates, and if you want to fast forward this to next year, if Tamar Bates is here, you need him to be able to get to the rim or at least get within 5 feet to make some baskets so people just don't overplay him on the 3-point line. He's certainly capable of that. And we've seen him with I would say the courage to drive into the lane, but we haven't seen the confidence to finish this year. He needs to take that next step and be finishing around the rim if he's going to be the player I think that we all expected him to be coming out of high school. So I thought it was a really nice performance from Tamar on both ends of the floor. He definitely outplayed Trey Galloway on both ends of the floor. There's no question about that. And it's a second straight game he's done that. So here's hoping that this is something they can build on, because they're going to need a guy who can hit some shots in the NCAA tournament. Miller Kopp, Malik Renew, Miller Kopp, Tamar Bates, and Trey Galloway are all going to need to hit shots in the NCAA tournament. And then you're going to need Malik Renew coming off the bench, providing that spark that he does. Some people have already been asking, should he start? No, I love Malik coming off the bench with that energy. He energizes the team just as soon as that adrenaline wears off. I think it's a perfect spot for him right now. And he's been playing very well. So both he and Tamar, huge bonuses today.
I will say this. I know it's not going to happen, but I really, if it was me, I'd have some serious thought about putting Tamar in the lineup next week in that first round of the NCAA tournament, just because been a big believer that you reward guys for playing well. And Trey, as I said, he hasn't played well these last two games. And to me, Tamar's earned. Now, I'm not in practice. I don't know what they're doing in practice. I don't know how they're practicing. I don't know what their production value in practice is. And I know Mike Woodson probably isn't going to. We know he values veteran seniority really more than.
It might be a little late to change the lineup.
Maybe.
Season, I think,
I will just say I grew up watching Bob Knight switch lineups around once in a while. So even if it was late in the year, but I know it's not going to happen, but I think tomorrow, and we talked a little bit about this last night, Ryan and Andy, I know you weren't with us last night, but just that defensive effort has made the difference for me to see tomorrow, because I think it's helping his offense, the fact he's locked in better defensively.
Yeah, so before we transition to stats, I wanted to circle back on this on Renew, which I had forgotten to mention. He right before he went out, had kind of gambled for a steal on the wing, ended up fouling a jump shooter who made the shot. He went out of the game with 11:48 to play, and he never came back in. I just don't really understand. IU didn't sub hardly at all down the stretch. They went small for a really short period of time and went back to it. I just didn't understand it based on how it played, but no need to believe it. All right, let's transition. Let's go inside the numbers. We've hit on a handful of these already on some of the important numbers that define the game, but I know, Ryan, you said you had something you wanted to hit on, so I'll throw it to you first here.
Well, it was just going to be, I was going to talk about tomorrow, but I also can put at another example of 3 versus 2 is Indiana 47% from the field, Penn State was 40% from the field, and Penn State won. And the reason why is they got to the free throw line, first of all, maybe a bit more than they should have comparatively to Indiana. I mean, 11-26 in the free throw department when Indiana was playing through the paint mostly. Probably deserved a couple more calls there. As Jeff pointed out, there were 2 where Trey should have been at the line for four more free throw shots there. I mean, I don't know what the officials were thinking there, but anyway, and then Penn State, outscored them from the 3-point line, 24-6. And when it winds up being a 4-point game, that's the difference in the game right there. It's free throw line, 3-point line, and Indiana has to get back to doing that. The other thing was the offensive rebounds. I mean, giving up 9 to Penn State, who was a terrible rebounding team, terrible offensive rebounding team, and giving up 12 second chance points when you lose by 4 is real tough.
That one definitely stood out. IU out-rebounded overall 38-30. And it's not even so much that they aren't a good offensive rebounding team. It's just not something that they value at all. Based on statistically, they're just trying to get back. They want to slow the game down, all those kinds of things. I think that was one that stood out to me. IU, outside of Tamar Bates, was 0 of 9 on threes.
Can't do that and win in the NCAA tournament, FYI.
That's pretty brutal. Turnovers, assisted turnover rate, IU 20 assists on 31 made field goals. Only five turnovers. It just felt like IU could get the shots that they wanted on offense if they were patient enough to do it. And I think there were just a few too many times, particularly as the game got away from them a bit in the first half, where they just were willing to take the first shot that was available, even if it wasn't the best one. And really, you look down the stat sheet, the only 2 guys that shot, 3 guys that shot over 50% from the field, TJD 11-14, probably needed to get more shots, as we talked about before. Malik Renew 2 for 3, and Tamar Bates 6 of 12. Everybody else was below 50% shooting that played for IU. Coach Marlowe, thoughts on those or any other stats that you wanted to hit?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the free throw. Ryan talked about the overall number, but I kind of like I grew up, again, I've mentioned him a number of times. Bob Knight was the guy I was, trying to be when I was growing up to be a coach. And we always talked about make more free throws than your opponent shoots. Well, Penn State today, Penn State today, for a team that went to the line, I think they said 9 attempts per game, they made double the number we attempted. Let that sink in. They made double the free throws that we attempted. They were 23 of 26. We were 9 for 11. And I know, again, I'm not trying to complain about the fishing. I actually didn't think the fishing was all that bad. I thought Trey should have been at the line, like I pointed out. But there are parts of it I just didn't think we were strong in the lane. I didn't think we were aggressive at times. But a lot of, in a game where you lose by 4, when you get outscored by 14 at the line, you can't defend the line. And so that's the one number I wanted to point out here. I thought you guys pointed out some other good numbers, and that's the only one I wanted to point out.
Yeah, the one that for me is Trace Jackson Davis. You talked about Andy, that stretch where he didn't even get a shot offensively, and I know that there were some fouls in there, but he took 11 shots today in a game where Penn State doesn't have anybody who can guard him, and that's why they have to double so hard. But you did not being able to find ways to ISO him, get him in the middle of the floor where it's harder to double. They did it a few times, but mostly he was posting up on that right side to go over his right shoulder, and waiting for the double team to come and then playing off it. But he was 11 of 14. And he only shot 14. Tamar Bates shot 12. Jalen Hood-Schifino shot 13. I mean, Trey should have taken 20 attempts today, like minimum for me, because there's just no one they can guard. You play Purdue and he takes 12 attempts and dishes out a ton of assists or whatever. You understand that because they have Edey right there and that stuff. Penn State doesn't have that guy and didn't have anybody to guard him. And he only took 14 shots. I think the offense should have been far more focused on getting him the ball, especially in that stretch in the second half where Penn State looked exhausted and Indiana went directly away from it, which again, that's on the leadership of the team. That's on those guys who were in there. It's on your point guard, not running stuff for him. And it's on coaching too. Emphasize that from the sideline. You need to get him touches because there were possessions where he didn't even touch the ball on some possessions. And you just can't do that. I mean, that's just not a high basketball IQ. Recognize what the defense is giving you. Recognize the other team is tired and recognize they can't do anything against him and then attack. I mean, he only shot 3 free throws because they just didn't get him the ball enough to get in there, and Penn State couldn't guard him. They would have had to foul in that time to do anything to stop him, and Indiana just didn't get it done.
What I did really what's interesting, and it goes back to the kind of math component of what we talked about before. It would have been one thing in that point if you weren't going away from him in favor of taking threes or in favor of doing anything specific on the perimeter. They just went away from him.
They just stopped getting him touches. Yeah,
it was odd. So sorry, Coach Marlowe, go ahead and hop in.
I was just going to say that I thought they let the Penn State defense kind of freak them out a little bit in terms that
Penn State was dictating what Indiana was doing the whole game.
Right. And when they got it, when the few times they got it to TJD, they doubled and they dug in a little bit on it. And that just freaked them out. Like they decided they didn't want to throw it into him. And I didn't understand that part at all. So I just kind of wanted to kind of double up on your point, Ryan.
Yeah, only other number I'll throw out here before we break is fast break points 13-3 for IU. IU's best moments in this game when the game got to be up and down.
Yeah, I would have pressed earlier.
Penn State, I think it was worth a shot earlier just because you've got a team that's tired. Now the challenge is you've also got an IU team who's playing short bench and whatever, but I felt like you needed to do something to try to speed the game up because most of the good moments for IU were when things got up and down in this game. And that wasn't obviously hitting a bunch of transition threes and all those things, but that was where it felt like IU had the advantage. And what can you do to kind of push the pace? Because once you let Penn State get in the half court, they're more than content to have one or two guys just dribble around the entire possession until they do that. And that's for them. They're trying to maximize what they have to a certain extent. That if they can get the matchup they want, try to create opportunities to kick it out and shoot threes is what they want. I mean, they had a very defined philosophy, 100% and executed it versus IU's defined philosophy. They would tell you is we want to play through TJD. And when it got tight in the game, as we just talked about, IU went away from it. Penn State never went away from what they wanted to do.
No, and look, Micah Shrewsbury is a very, very good coach. He has designed a very good offense, and Penn State is perfectly comfortable running a full half-court possession, knowing they will get something. And pretty much all day, they did get something. I think there were 2 times late they missed something. I think they had 1 shot clock violation too. But in general, they know they can get a shot. It's just a matter of making the shot. And so the way to disrupt that is to speed them up. And I'd like to see Indiana in the tournament maybe throw a press on somebody a little bit. They've got guys who are quick enough. They've got guys with good hands. Maybe you don't get a steal, but you definitely throw the other team off of what they're doing and make them uncomfortable. I'd like to see it more. I really would. I think that Indiana's done it well this year, and they rarely get beat back deep because Trace is good enough to cover some ground back at the other end. Maybe you get a transition 3 against you, and then you say, okay, they figured it out. We're out of it. But I'd like to see them speed other teams up because you're right, Andy. You're absolutely right. When they speed teams up, they play better. And it also gets their offense cranking and working well. So totally agree with that, and I'd like to see it more.
Yeah, and one of the logical places to do that, and again, they didn't get to the line enough, but is off a made free throw. That's a place where you can set up your press or fall into a half court trap, change it up, give them a different look. I totally agree with both of you on that. I wish we'd do it more often as well.
All right, well, coming up, we're going to hand out our Hoosier Hustle Award, which is probably talking about TJD, who we've talked about not as much as normal today, given his stat line, more about him not getting the ball. But anyway, so we'll talk about that, hand out the Hoosier Hustle Award, and look ahead to what's next for IU. Stick with it.
This is Nick Zeisloft. I never miss an open three, and I never miss an episode of The Assembly Call.
Would have really enjoyed Nick Zeisloft out there raining threes.
Would have been nice.
Had the
Hey,
opportunity.
can we dress him up like those kids in the State Farm commercial where you just put him like inside somebody's body?
Yeah, maybe. All right, you're listening to the Simply Call IU postgame show. You can catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. Also, make sure you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 9,000 of your fellow IU fans have already subscribed. You can join that for free today at join.assemblycall.com. Again, that's join.assemblycall.com. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and Jeff Marlowe, and we are breaking down IU's 77-73 loss to Penn State. It's now time for our game balls, which are presented by our friends over at Bloom Environmental, where Allie and James and the crew help folks in southern and south central Indiana maintain healthy air quality in their home or business. You can learn more about all they offer at bloomenviro.com. And when you mention this ad, you can get 23% off their testing services, 23 in honor of TJD. All right, guys, this one, as has been the case so many times over the course of the season, will probably be an easy decision, but it is kind of funny. I don't feel like we've talked a ton about Trace, who I assume will get this. And so, Coach Marlowe, I'll throw it to you first for your game ball pick and anything you want to hit with TJD, assuming that it's him.
Yeah, I'll go with TJD here, and I will just say this. I think it got tweeted out during the game that he did officially move past Don Schlunt into the number 3 spot all time on the IU scoring list. So congrats to Trace. And Ryan pointed out last night he'd have to have one heck of an NCAA tournament to probably move up any farther on the list. But and honestly, though, I kind of felt it was almost like a quiet 24 for TJD tonight. You know, I know he had a couple dunks and he had some and some nice moves inside, but like we talked about in the earlier segment, we really didn't feed him a whole lot. And like Ryan said, he only ended up with 14 shot attempts. But I'm going to go with TJD here because I felt like he was the one player that at least throughout the course of the game was at least trying to make things happen.
Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, it's TJD. 24 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, no turnovers, a block, and 2 steals. Thought he had a couple opportunities for blocks that, you know, again, playing back-to-back days, maybe just didn't have the lift to get to them a few times. I would have liked to see them kind of run him at Pickett a little more when Pickett would get down low, make it, you know, maybe as a help defender who's can go up and maybe affect the shot a little bit. He did affect the shot twice. I mean, Pickett had back-to-back air balls from about 6 feet, and that was because TJD was lurking, and also Pickett's legs look heavy. But so yeah, it's easy. I'm glad they were able to get him about 3 minutes worth of rest, but he was fantastic today, as he always is. And you kind of have a what could have been with Indiana attacking with him a little bit more in the middle part of that second half when they had a chance to take the lead and just didn't. I mean, you know, crazy thing is Indiana's last lead came with like, you know, it was at like 12-11 or something like that. So it was 12-11 with 13:40 left in the first was the Indiana's last lead of the game, which is just crazy to think. So I you know, would have liked to see him get the ball more. Hopefully in the NCAA tournament, they can continue to feed him and he can just continue to rack up points because he's such an efficient player and he's going to continue to do so as long as he's got that IU uniform on. But I'll say this too about Trace. Now we're in elimination mode. every game could be his last. So if you're an Indiana fan, savor every single possession he has the ball, and on both, and every single possession he's roaming around, they're blocking shots. Because if Indiana falls, he's done, and that's gonna be a real sad moment for Indiana fans.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the stat line. It did feel like if you can have a quiet 24 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, I guess he did. But maybe that's just, which is astounding given that we talked about before. He went almost 8 minutes without getting a shot. Now some of that is him being unselfish and trying to find other guys, but another just solid performance from him. It just didn't got some help from some unexpected sources today in the form of Tamar Bates and Malik Renew to a certain extent, but just not enough from the other guys around him to put it over the top. So that is Trace's 20th game ball, I believe, in the season. Next closest person, Jalen Hitchfino, who has 4. All right, so we will transition from that, and if I can pull up the sound here, we will get into the next one.
The Hoosier Real Hustle Award.
Hi, this is Anthony Leal, reminding you to check out our friends at Evansville Security Services. Based in the hometown of IU legend Calvert Chaney, Evansville Security Services has been providing off-duty police officers to businesses and individuals since 2001. In other words, they're in the business of prevention and peace of mind. And remember, prevention cannot be measured. To learn more about how Evansville Security Services can help you preserve your peace of mind by preventing bad outcomes, visit evansvillesecurityservices.com. That's evansvillesecurityservices.com.
All right, so for our Hoosier Hustle Award, Ryan, I will throw it to you first. Who gets yours for today?
Sorry, this was a tough one. I really like the way Tamar Bates played. I think I'm going to give it to him because he was out there longer than Malik. He was out there twice as long as Malik. I could see it to Malik, but he was only there for 12 minutes. He should have been out there for more, quite frankly. But I thought Tamar, forget the offensive numbers, which I think plays into player of the game, which game ball, which goes to Trace. But defensively, I thought he played really well. I thought he did everything he could against Pickett, who backed him out. Those are the only negative times I saw. That was about 3 buckets that Pickett scored were just him backing Tamar down because Tamar's not big enough to guard him. But other than that, Tamar was on point defensively. He was one of the few guys to not get beat several times on a 3. And I really liked seeing him out there running the floor, opening up some lanes for people and being aggressive on offense, which, there wasn't a whole lot of aggressive play on offense out there. As a side note, I also thought, I know Miller passed up a lot of threes that he should have taken, passed up a couple threes he should have taken, was 0 of 3 from 3. I thought he played really well defensively too. He was very engaged. He actually was probably their best straight up option on Pickett today because Pickett couldn't back him down as much because he's 6'7". But I thought Miller played well defensively. So both those guys get a little head nod from me. Malik was great. I just don't think he played well enough to get the Hustle Award, so I'm giving it to Tamar.
All right, Coach Marlowe.
Yeah, I actually could agree with Ryan on a lot of those points. I kind of was looking at a couple guys as well. I thought Renew was really solid, and I loved the effort he brought off the bench. Would have liked to seen him get more minutes in the second half. And I thought Miller, I was, when I first saw that, Ryan, I was like, man, we got Miller on Pickett. I'm not sure I like that, but he actually did do a fairly decent job on him when he did either have him or he got switched off on him. So I thought Miller played well, but I'm going to go with Tamar. I've been one that's been a little critical of Tamar as we've gone through the season, and I'm going to give him his props when he plays well, like he did last night and tonight. And I think he deserves the Hustle Award tonight.
I'll go the same direction. I think you guys hit it well. I think to me it was Tamar or Malik, and I think what like I said earlier with Bates, I was glad to see him after he took a couple of bad shots, missed a couple of shots early, didn't really detract from, 1, his energy on the defensive end, or 2, his willingness to take shots as the game went along. And I thought he really stepped up, played well. And again, if we want to try to take some positives away from this heading into the NCAA tournament, I think a couple solid games from him and Malik Renew to be able to provide a little bit of punch off the bench is pretty huge. So I think a well-deserved honor for him. So he gets that one. That is his second Hoosier Hustle Award. the season. Leader is Trey Galloway, I believe, with 7, if I'm looking at the totals here correctly. So as we talk lingering questions, obviously one lingering question is where does IU go in the NCAA tournament? That's a question we won't know until the selection show tomorrow at 6 o'clock. But for me, it's just, and Jared's talked about this a lot. Ultimately, these past few days are pretty good, or these past 2 days are kind of a microcosm of what IU's been late in the season, and that is a team that can play really well in stretches or in games, but a team that is ultimately inconsistent. And we can pin that on, the philosophy of what they want to do offensively, whatever you want to pin it on. But the reality is that's kind of who this team has shown us that they are. So I guess, Ryan, for me, the lingering question is, is this finally the one that serves as the wake-up call of, hey, I have to play with the same sense of urgency that I played with in the last 2 minutes when they almost erased a 15-point lead in 2 minutes? And do they come out with that urgency in the NCAA tournament? Do they come out with that because, hey, this is it for Trace? You play this way again, you're done. As a collective group, if you come out and make some of the same mistakes, does this team have what it takes, do you think, to kind of flip it on to make a run as the tournament starts next week?
I don't know. And I think that's a scary thing to say this far into the season. I'll say this. They started both games in this tournament well. They started well, which has been a problem for Indiana at times in games they lose, is they don't start well. The problem was that middle section of the game, they just sort of lost the intensity and lost the energy. And it's not an effort because these guys are playing hard. I've said that since day one of the Mike Woodson era. These guys play hard for him. They do. They play hard. They expend energy, whatever. But there are times where you think you're playing harder than you are, I think. And that happens to every college kid. And no matter what school he's at, no matter who your coach is. And there are times where they just suffer energy deficits. And and they lose focus defensively. They start making dumb plays offensively, taking bad shots, getting into – there's this point in this game where they're like 0 of 10. They missed 10 straight shots, or it was 9 maybe. Maybe it was like 1 of 11 in a row. And you can't have that at this time of the year. You just can't. You need to be able, when things are going badly, to change what you're doing and get a bucket. And that's on the players. It's on the coaches to call a play. Okay, we know we can get a basket off this. There's always one in your back pocket. And so Indiana needs to be able to not allow those runs where they're getting smoked. Now, they've been able to answer with big runs at times, and today they answered with a big run. It was just too late. If they start that a minute earlier, they win the game. You start that with 3 minutes left instead of 2, you win the game. And it just those areas of deficit where they're getting 14-4 runs put on them, they can't do that at this point of the year. You need to a 7-point run is understandable, but having a team score 14 points when you're answering with 4 and getting a plus 10 out of a 4-minute run, not okay. And you can't do that at this time of year, especially when you're this much of a veteran team. If you're a team of freshmen and sophomores, it's going to be run versus run versus run versus run. Not with these veterans. And this team can do something. It has 2 studs and it has role players who can play. You can't fall in those gaps, though, because teams better than Penn State will crush you if you do that. We saw Kansas do it earlier this year. A good team will crush you if you allow them to do that. So heading into the tournament, that's my biggest thing is, can you stop those runs and have them not be 10 to 14-point runs, but be 5, 7 points? And then you answer with your own and keep it closer.
Yeah, Coach Marlowe, how do you kind of view what we've seen from this team and how that can translate or will translate into the next phase of the season?
Real quick, Andy, I want to ask you a question because I'm not a bracketologist per se. Is it a true S curve? I mean, if IU was the last 4 or the first 5, they'd still pretty much be in the same region, right?
No, it's not really, because of some of the other bracketing rules and who you can be aligned with. So they kind of went away from that when they did some of the other things geographically. Yeah. So okay. It's a little bit dependent upon where other teams are and different things like that. So okay. I won't get into the minutia of it, but it's not quite that straightforward.
Yeah. So my lingering question is the same as we've talked about, and Jared's talked about on here. And I think I want to credit Ryan when he says things that I agree with. I think it was him that made the comment last week that this team, would it really totally shock us if they lost on the first weekend? it wouldn't be shocking if they got to the Elite Eight. They're just so inconsistent. And I just think that somewhere, and I don't know, it's not a switch to turn on, but if they can find somehow a way to play their best 2 weeks of basketball, we could be here in a couple of weeks talking about going to New Orleans with a chance to play in the Final Four. Now I know that's an outside shot, but that's how good they can be when they are playing focused, hard-nosed, connected basketball. And so my question for them is, can they and the staff and the people around them bring that for 40 minutes every game? And like Ryan pointed out and you pointed out, it's one and done now. Yeah, it's advancing or go home. And so you better bring it every night, because you're not going to get another one. You won't get another chance this year if you don't.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show as we wrap up here. Remember, you can check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. Use the promo code HOME at checkout to get 15% off your first order. And with that, it's time for last call. Ryan, I'll throw it to you first. Final thoughts on the loss to Penn State.
Another disappointment in the Big Ten tournament. Shocker. I don't think any of us expected this to go particularly well, because we've been trained to not believe that, but it's a bummer they didn't get to the final. I mean, it really is. I think that this game was there for them. If you look at, we were kind of talking in the chat off air here. If you look at it, Seth Lundy, who's been lighting it up from 3, 2 of 7. Andrew Funk, who you can't
hit them both early too.
Yeah. So he's 0 of 5 the rest of the game. Andrew Funk, guy, you cannot let shoot the ball. 3 of 8. He took 8. You don't want him to take 8. He hit 3 of them. Miles Dredd, 3-point, poison from deep for the opponents. 1 of 4. Indiana had his chances in this game. If you look at those numbers, you isolate those numbers, and you ask me who won the game, I would have said Indiana, because none of those guys was shooting it particularly well. Penn State wound up at 35% for the game. So Indiana had his chances. The problem is that Indiana allowed an opponent to dictate what it was going to do. And it can't do that. You can't do that when you have an All-American and you have a guy who's probable lottery pick also on your team. You cannot do that. And that's the lesson moving forward from this one, is you have to dictate the tempo and you have to dictate what you do offensively. Do not take what a defense gives you. Don't make a defense force you into what you don't want, which is long twos, contested shots, all of that, and going away from your stud. So that's the lesson from this one. I hope Indiana learns it. I hope that they get, favorable. I think we're due a favorable matchup in the NCAA tournament. I don't think we've had one in a long time, a favorable stretch. This is a team that should be in the Sweet 16. If they don't make it there, I think it's a disappointment, a pretty disappointing season, end of the season, if they don't make the Sweet 16. But let's hope that they line up against teams that they can match up well against, and that they then go play the way they're capable of playing. And I don't think they played the way they were capable of playing today, and I think it's what sunk them. And valiant effort at the end to get this close. I really did appreciate the effort and snapping back into it instead of just fading away and sort of shrugging their shoulders and walking down the tunnel after a 15-point loss. I appreciated the effort late. I just wish it would have come a minute or two earlier. You do that a minute or two earlier, you're heading into your third matchup with Purdue. Instead, they waited till too late, and they just let Penn State body them for a long stretch of the game, and it was really disappointing to watch. So, it's been a successful season so far. Let's hope they learn the lessons of this game, because they're lessons they should have learned earlier in the season, and they have not yet. So let's hope that this is a wake-up call.
Yep. Coach Marlowe, real quick before I throw it to you, one reminder for when our next show will be, which we're going to do a post-selection show, Sunday show. It looks like around 7 Eastern is what Jared had here. Follow the Twitter account for that. Women's selection show is also tomorrow night, a little bit later than the men's show. I believe it's at 8. I want to say.
Yeah, that's community only too, I think, Andy. I think you have to be, that's only for our community. It's more of a happy hour. It's more of a happy hour, I believe, that is going to show up.
Okay.
But don't quote me.
Right.
But we're doing that. Yes. But we will be doing that tomorrow. Kathy and I will be doing that.
All right. Awesome. So feel free to kind of throw in what you guys have planned. Obviously we'll be doing post-game shows for the tournament. And so feel free to throw that in as well. We certainly appreciate you hopping on with us the last couple of nights here as well.
Yeah, and Kathy and I will be following the women as we go through, and wherever they play, whenever they play, we'll have our post-game shows begging as close to after the game as we can. If they happen to draw like a 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock afternoon game, Kathy and I's work schedules don't allow us to hop right on as soon as that game's over. So we'll probably be on a little bit later in the afternoon. But I think also, Andy, I don't know if Jared said anything to you guys. I think last year we kind of did a combined bracket show with the men's and women's show, like on Wednesday night before it started, or maybe even Monday. I can't remember what night we did, but we're kind of thinking that's going to happen again as well. So just keep following the Twitter accounts and the community to find out when we're going to be on. We'll keep you updated there. And want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the show. I'm with Ryan. It was a little disappointing, but isn't it nice that our disappointment is the fact that we lost on Saturday? Remember how many times we've been in this tournament and lost on Thursday or Wednesday? So at least we won a game and we got to Saturday. And yes, it would have been nice to beat Penn State, but I'm looking forward to next week. I still want to believe that this team can do something in the NCAA tournament, get to that second weekend, and then after that, you just never know. But they've got to play with more urgency for a full game, and they've got to play with more focus on the defensive end. They can't be as uncommunicative as they were tonight and last night.
Yeah, for me, like I said at the beginning, it feels like a similar refrain that we've had a lot of times this season. I think that overall speaks to the inconsistency of who this team is. And it's not that they lost, it's how they lost. I think we've probably come on for most games and said something to that effect. And I think today's game and even yesterday's felt like they had solved a little bit of the slow starts, but really struggled at times in the middle part of the first half. And the 12-6 lead became a large deficit that they really had to chip away from as they work back to get back in the game. And kudos to them to get back and tie it initially and then make that run at the end. But this team has to find a way to play more consistently somehow to get on a run. It doesn't mean that if they get on a run that they have all of a sudden become a consistent team, but they can be a consistent team in March, and that's all you really need. You've seen teams over the history of the tournament be able to kind of pull things together, maybe play in a way that they had struggled to play consistently during the season. And I think this team has some of the components that you look for a team that can have postseason success. This team also has some of the traits that you look for a team that can flame out quickly if they're not focused and some of those things. So I think anybody who knows what they're going to get from this team on a game-to-game basis is fooling you if they tell you that they know that. But I think overall there have been a lot of positives to the season and hopefully a lot of basketball left to be played. We're certainly have enjoyed the journey and some of the ups and downs of what this season has been so far. And quite honestly, I think we will see a really focused effort from TJD as he comes out looking to keep his college career going. Was fantastic again today. Just didn't get him the ball quite enough at times in the second half and down the stretch. But looking forward to watching his final games, however many of those there may be left. He certainly earned that over the course of the season. And looking forward to seeing what happens next. So we'll learn about that tomorrow and on the selection show, figure out where IU will be going in the tournament and who they'll be facing. Again, right now, my best bet is that they're a 4 seed, and we'll see who their opponent will be. A lot of the teams on the 13 line still have their conference tournaments to play this evening, so we'll see what happens there and get some idea of who they're going to play and where they're going. Likely to be Albany, Orlando, or Greensboro if I had to guess on that part. So we'll see, but that will do it for us on the show tonight. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. Don't forget to go to join.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for the music you hear on the show. Special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our logo. Thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops with you again on Sunday night. And until then,
take it from me, Freddie Max Wayne Jr. Keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and man, go up and dunk the ball. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
I like everything about that.
All right, gentlemen, appreciate you being here. I think we've said all there is to say about another Big Ten tournament loss. Cursed event that it is.
Why do they even have this tournament every year? Really, it doesn't even matter.
That's what Bob Knight said.
Yeah,
understand it.
If you win it, it doesn't help you.
The fact that they have it played when it does, and I mean that argument's been made about a lot of the conference tournaments. They don't help you a whole lot, but yeah, you give yourself no chance whatsoever. Now it would have been interesting if Ohio State had been in it. Committee would have had a little bit of contingency work to do if that had happened, but obviously they did not get it done. That would have been a hell of a run to win 5 in 5 days for them to win it. But
yeah,
didn't Syracuse do that one year in the Big East tournament?
No, UConn. Well, Syracuse I think got to the final with Jerry McNamara. Okay. Did they win it? UConn did it with Kemba.
Okay,
and that was they did that. They won something like I think it was 11 games in a row to win the national championship. I mean,
that's right.
But that was Kemba hitting step back like daggers.
Yeah, that was the one where he ended the one guy's life on Pitt that fell down, and that was the first game, I think.
He hit a couple game-winning step backs in that tournament too, and that was the year. So he did that in Maui that year when I was there, and I remember sitting in the row with all the executives. So for some reason, they stuck me instead of the press side. They stuck me. I would think I was a late press pass. They stuck me alongside all the NBA executives and scouts, and I remember sitting in the row during the championship game where Kemba scored something like 96 points over the 3 games or something. And I'm just watching them as he just keeps just ruining guys for jumpers. And UConn wasn't even supposed to compete for that title that year because they were so young, and just everybody sitting there just like jaws on the ground. And when you see NBA guys with their jaws on the ground during a college game, you know something like special is happening. It was insane.
Was that the same year though? That was it. Them in Syracuse where McNamara they had like the 4 or 5 overtime game, or is that a different year?
I think it was a different.
That was a different year. That was a different year.
Yeah.
I think that was I forget who some of the key participants in that were, but yeah. So, all right. Well, I'm gonna wrap
guys.
this up.
I know you're busy, Andy.
Bracketology, so
say a prayer for Andy
on.
Bottoms. Yeah. Say a prayer for Andy Bottoms over the next 2 days.
Appreciate you guys having me on again.
Oh, of course, Jeff.
Absolutely.
Good luck tomorrow.
Appreciate it. All right. Thanks everybody. Thanks for being here. We'll get back to everybody when we know where everybody's going. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.